Akira and the Three Kappas. Akira never wanted to be anything. At least that's what his mother thought, and his father, and his brothers and sisters, and his teachers. And well, you get the idea. He never wanted to play sports. He never wanted to go camping or to the beach or to a friend's house. He never wanted to do his homework. If his family went to a baseball game or a picnic or a movie, he whimpered about not wanting to go. But Akira didn't see this as a problem. It wasn't that he hated all that stuff, he just loved to read. When Akira came home from school, he dropped his coat on the floor, went straight to his room, and grabbed a book off the shelf. He sank into books the way that you might settle into a warm bath, soaking up ideas and facts and fantasies. When his mother told him he needed to get out more, to do things, Akira didn't see the point. Nothing out there was better than what was in a book. What Akira dreaded most was summer days, warm summer days. No one cared what you did when it was pouring outside. No one yelled at you when it was dark and cold. But as soon as the yellow sun popped up in a blue sky, his mother would glare at him. Seeing her son curled up on the sofa, nose wedged in a book, his mother would say the thing Akira hated most to hear. Akira, go do something. Go outside and play. After a useless revolt, Akira would find himself kicked out the door. Blinking in the sunshine, his mom would pack him a lunch and a bottle of water and tell him not to come home until sundown. Then he would fall into the one thing he didn't mind doing outside. Akira liked to walk and read. Setting his feet on one of the many paths in the forest near his home, Akira would hold up a book to his face like a shield and just start walking. Today, like any other day, off he went. It must have been a particularly good book. There were dragons and gold and a collection of dwarves. Akira just kept walking and walking and walking, not paying the slightest bit of attention to where he was going. He walked past trees and bushes and rocks. He walked past bugs and critters and mushrooms, all without noticing. He was so deep into his book, he didn't even see the thing lying across his path until he tripped over it. His book went flying while Akira tumbled into the dirt. "What was that?" Akira said. It was a body, small, green, child-sized, with scaly skin like a turtle crossed with a monkey. Akira had read enough old folk stories to know it was Kappa when he stumbled upon one. His grandma, Nuno, had loved telling old tales. She had given him a collection of folklore books when he was young. Reading all his books had given Akira an open mind on monsters. After all, if there could be a monster in the Loch Ness and a hairy Bigfoot in the Pacific Northwest, why not a Kappa in his forest? Stranger things had happened. Although this stranger thing was about too strange, almost. One thing Akira knew about Kappa was that they shouldn't be away from water. They had little bowls on their heads, and if that bowl dried out, the Kappa would die. This one looked pretty close, only a damp green sheen in a bowl that should have been full of water. Akira thought he was lucky to find the Kappa on dry land. He knew that Kappa did to kids what Kappa did to kids they caught swimming in the creek. They had a fondness for human lives, and they weren't too fussy about how they got it. They stuck their hand in and yanked it out. Akira immediately sat down. "A real Kappa," Akira said. Who would have thought? He grabbed the nearby stick and poked it. He first tapped it on its turtle shell. After a few drops, he got courageous enough. Whoa, I'm sorry, you distracted the hell out of me. Try that again. Yokai Stories. Whew. No commentary, just keep going. After a few raps, he got courageous enough to poke it in the soft bits. With the fifth poke, the Kappa exhaled suddenly, its breath sounding like the soft ground after a summer rain. A single eye slowly winked open from the scaly face. Its beak began to move. "Help me," the Kappa whispered. "Help you," Akira scooched back, startled by the strange creature suddenly speaking to him. "No way, I know what Kappa do. No, not that, but please help me, I promise. Nearby to a river, I have two brothers that live there. Each of them has great treasure," he wheezed. "Take me there, I promise. You can have what you like. You can choose. You can choose, please." Akira knew enough about magical creatures to know with them, a promise is a promise. They may be evil and nasty and rip out your liver to eat, but they would never do anything as disgusting as break their own word. So he took out his water bottle and poured some of the water into the Kappa's bowl. The change in the creature was fantastic. It leapt straight up from the ground, did a fast-paced jig. Then it grabbed the bottle and poured all the water into its bowl. The Kappa looked at Akira with inhuman eyes. "And now for you." The Kappa smiled, its voice slightly menacing. It knew Akira was afraid. "Hey, you promised." Akira jumped backwards. "And a promise is a promise." The Kappa smiled in his best attempt to look trustworthy. "Walk with me and we'll come to a bridge over a river. My two brothers are there. When we arrive, I'll swim out first and talk to them. They'll know not to harm you. Then you can have your pick of their treasures to take home, whatever you wish." Akira was very wary, but followed the monster. The Kappa skipped along at a steady pace. Sure enough, they came to a river. A bridge crossed over, exactly as the Kappa had described. Seeing its home, the Kappa was so happy it sped up, running as fast as it could. It plunged straight into the water. Hey now, if you're lying and trying to get away, the Kappa popped its head up from the water, looking back. Trust me, it said, I'll be right back. The boys soon saw something emerge from the water. Well, three somethings, including the Kappa that Akira had rescued. However, where that Kappa had been friendly and small, its two brothers were huge and menacing. Their skin was rough, deeply scaled, and their elbows and knees were bony and hooked. The oldest brother glanced at Akira with menace in his eyes. We hear you rescued our little brother, and he made you a promise, the elder brother croaked. Well, a promise made is a promise kept. We have two treasures for you to choose from. The biggest Kappa reached into the water and produced a heavy wooden mallet. It looked very old, and it radiated power. This mallet is magic, the Kappa said. Take it and strike a stone. A single grain of rice will appear. If you shout the name of something before you strike the mallet, then that thing will appear. Gold, diamond, horses, even pizza. Your every wish is yours. Akira looked at the mallet, and he knew that Kappa was telling the truth, but then he thought back to some books he had read. It seems he had heard a story once about a boy who got a magic hammer that gave him everything he wanted. It was great at first, his parents were overjoyed, but then Akira remembered the boy's parents became greedy. They took the hammer and they used it to make themselves rich. Then the neighbors heard of the fortune. They tried to kill the family and steal the hammer. Akira couldn't remember all the details of the story, but he was sure everything came to a bad end. The magic mallet didn't bring any happiness at all, just greed. I don't think so. Akira replied, What do you have? The second Kappa, a little bit smaller, but no less thorny and burly than his brother, reached into the water and produced an oyster. Gently wedging the oyster open, he pulled out a small, hard case. The case looked like it was made out of ebony, with a skeleton carved on the lid. From inside the case, he withdrew a tiny needle. It was a little sewing needle, and it glinted in the sunlight. This is the resurrection needle, the Kappa said, its voice reedy and thin. A great and powerful artifact. If you prick a dead person with this needle, they come back to life. You had a beloved grandmother once, didn't you? With just a little poke, you can have her back, baking you cookies and reading you stories just like she used to. This one made Akira's heart cry with longing. He did love his grandma Nuno and thought that there could be no greater treasure than having her back, but he remembered what the stories told him. The story she told him, the one about a boy who got a magic needle that could bring people back to life. It seemed amazing and wonderful, but as so often happens in these stories, things turned out badly. The dead were not happy about being brought back. Living people heard about it and tried to take the needle from the boy. Wars were fought. Far more people died fighting for the needle than were brought back by it. Akira was pretty sure that the boy committed suicide at the end. It was one of the most terrible stories. He didn't like to think about that one at all. No, I don't think so. Akira shuddered to himself. Well, we must give you something, said the Kappa. Akira had rescued. Compared to his two brothers, the Kappa was much less frightening. He almost looked friendly, if you can call a monster friendly. He too reached into the water and brought up a little sack. He put his hand inside and pulled out something green. Here, it said, holding out a cucumber. What is that? A cucumber. Akira knew that Kappa loved cucumbers. It was their favorite food. In fact, it was said if you wanted to befriend a local Kappa, you had to write your name on a cucumber and drop it into a river. At least that's what the story said. But still, is it some kind of magic cucumber? Akira asked. Does it turn mud into gold or grow a magic beanstalk? Can it be eaten forever without running out? Something like that? Nope, just a cucumber. The Kappa said, I stole it from a farmer this morning. That's where I was going, to try to get some more cucumbers. But I got lost on the path and wandered where you found me. No magic at all, no surprise, nothing. It is a particularly ordinary cucumber, but quite delicious. I ate two of its fellows today, and they were scrumptious. That farmer knows what he's doing. Akira thought and racked his brains, going through all of the stories he had ever heard. Sure, there were stories of magic vegetables and people coming to bad ends or living happily ever after, depending on where the story was written, but a plain, ordinary cucumber. Akira had to admit he had never heard of a single bad thing that ever happened to a kid who ate their vegetables. Okay, said Akira, and with that, the third Kappa swam over and handed Akira the cucumber. Akira was nervous to get that close to a Kappa in the water. The stories told him exactly what could happen. But the Kappa did as he'd said he'd do, never once threatening Akira. The boy took the cucumber and had to admit that it did look very nice. Magic or not, it was a fine vegetable. He was about to eat the cucumber when he saw the sad look on the Kappa's face. It couldn't quite frown, but the beaky mouth had a definite downward cast to it, a twist in the corners. Akira understood the Kappa really didn't want to part with his cucumber. But a promise was a promise. Feeling sorry for Akira, Feeling sorry for it, Akira snapped the cucumber in two and offered the Kappa half. Here, thank you, the Kappa said, shocked at the offered delight. He reached for the cucumber shyly. Taking it from Akira, the Kappa grinned as much as his beaky mouth allowed. Munching happily on the cucumber, he jumped into the water. The Kappa swam about halfway into the middle of the river. When he turned suddenly around and waved back to Akira, if you want to come and play sometime, I won't mind. I promise I won't kill you, said the Kappa, its beaky mouth almost smiling. I promise, it said, plunging into the water and swimming away to wherever it lived. Akira smiled too. Tracing back his path, he picked up the book from where it had been thrown, and he went walking home, satisfied with how things had turned out. Munching on his half of the cucumber, he had the oddest feeling. Somehow he knew that when he got home, he wouldn't read a book. It seemed like for the first time in his life, instead of reading about someone else's adventure, he'd had his own adventure. He laughed at the idea. His mom would be so proud. He finally did something. And instead of reading a book when he got home this time, Akira thought to himself, maybe he would do something else. Maybe he would write a book by himself. This was Akira and the Three Kappa, the first story in Zack Davisson's Yokai Stories, which I recommend highly because they're delightfully. If you like this story and this reading, hit subscribe or like or whatever the hell you do. Leave a comment so you know I exist. Validate me. Anyway, it's Ellie Duhane reading aloud in the basement, and thank you so much. Okay, thanks.